Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast, Friends in High Places. This is Mike, your host. So today we have a special guest. He introduced himself as Nicholas on a previous episode with Emily. Today, Jared, how are you doing today?
I'm alright. Nicholas was my slave name, but now I'm a free man.
A free man. And what is your mental health awareness diagnosis?
My diagnosis, treatment-resistant depression.
So you're clinically depressed.
Very much so.
How long have you been feeling under the weather, so to speak?
My whole life, pretty much, since my childhood.
And do you have any brothers and sisters?
I have one brother.
And is he younger?
He's older.
He's older. And does he suffer from depression or?
Yeah, much in the same way as myself.
Right on. How old are you, Jared?
I am 21 years young.
You're too smart to be clinically depressed.
I think it's the opposite. I think the more intelligence, more self-awareness a person has, the easier it is to lapse into depression. And that what they say, ignorance is bliss and whatnot.
Well, I've talked with a lot of people who've been clinically depressed, and nobody is quite like you.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting about you?
What's interesting about me? I got an offer. It doesn't speak for itself. I'm an interesting man. I'm a man of many talents. I'm very artistically minded. I write screenplays. I create music. I do a lot of thinking. I read a lot of philosophy and whatnot.
And where are you from?
I'm initially from Toronto, but we're in Montreal now.
And how long have you been here at Douglas?
The Douglas, in this iteration, 6 weeks about.
And
6.5.
When was the first time that you felt like totally depressed to the point of getting help?
I was brought to the hospital when I was 13 because I was suicidal. I guess that was the first point. But I was depressed for a while before that.
So you were self-aware at 13 years old?
I was self-aware at like 5 years old. I remember, can I tell a brief story about the first time I became aware of the concept of death?
Go ahead.
So it was when I was 3 years old. Do you know who Johnny Appleseed is?
No.
Okay, so he's the man who he brought apple orchards to America, I believe, from Europe or something. So it was a children's book. I was reading it at 3 years old. Basically it followed, Johnny's entire life from, when he was born, he's a child. It's like the first time he tastes an apple, he wants to follow in his father's footsteps. The first time he sees a tree, he plants a tree, he discovers his calling in life, and then he travels to America, he's planting all these apple orchards, he's going from, region to region, and it follows his whole life, even though it's, a kid's book with pictures and whatnot. By the end of the book, it's like he's an old man, and it's like he has, he's basically become something of a mythological figure. He has like a very large fan base. The people love him because he brought them apple orchards. And he's really old at the end of the book, and then at the very end of the book, he's just walking and he's tired and he sits under a tree, like probably an apple tree for the irony, and he sits under this tree and he goes to sleep and he doesn't wake up, and the book makes sure to mention this. And that was the first time I realized, like, that's what happens to every single person. You go to sleep and you don't wake up, and that fucked with me when I was 3 years old. I sometimes wonder if my entire life is just a very visceral reaction to having, the Band-Aid torn off at that young of an age.
Do you think by reading that book it enticed you to be more clinically depressed, or like?
I think it made me more like,
skeptical.
Yeah, I think I became quite cynical at a young age. And another reason for that was that I was raised religious, and at a youngish age, I kind of realized that, like, that sort of, or at least in my view, that sort of thing is, like, not really real. It's kind of like, people need to believe their lives aren't meaningless, that there's some value, there's some purpose, so they kind of, like, create elaborate fairy tales to entice themselves. and it made me very distrusting of adults because people told me these things like they were fact from, a young age.
And do you think being raised religious, do you think that enticed you to think about afterlife or mythical features? Or
I mean, when I was very young, I used to like talk to myself in my head, and I was convinced that it was God talking to me because people told me they're the God. So I was like, oh, he must be talking to me. But it would be like, because I had like OCD, I would tell myself like, oh, like if I want to like get a good mark on this test or something, like in my head, I'd say, oh, if I want to get a good mark on this test or something, I'll take off my shoe and throw it as far as I can, and I'd think that was God talking to me, so I'd do it, and eventually I realized that's like kind of bullshit.
And do you think?
Can I hear you on it?
Yeah, well, when you're more cynical about everything, you're very skeptical. We've had many conversations that enticed us to not get to know each other, but this is the first time that we're one-on-one. Do you think your diagnosis is relevant to your upbringing, or is it just something that is...
Well, I think a person's entire life is just like, an extension of their upbringing. I mean, do you know the movie Citizen Kane?
Yeah.
So you know how the whole premise of the movie is like you know the movie?
Yeah.
So like when he's a kid with his sled and whatnot, where like as a child he's taken from his mother. So it's like the whole point of the movie is that his entire life is a brute force reaction to that traumatic event. That event just created everything afterwards, and then on his deathbed he's just reminded of it.
So from an early on age, did you think we're in a matrix, or what is your opinion on that?
I mean, I do think like just like
because throwing your shoe and to get a good mark on a test is highly unethical.
I know, but I was just like fucked up in many ways. Like I had other phases where I believed other things.
Do you believe that your psychosis in sort of episodes of hearing voices, or was it just?
No, that was when I was very young, and it was just because people told me to believe in religion.
What about in the last year? What enticed you to come here, Douglas?
That was 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, what enticed you to come here?
I was suicidal. I was thinking about killing myself.
And did you think you could go through with it, or?
I was planning to book a train to Halifax and then like get a hotel room and hang myself because I didn't want like anyone I know here to find me.
And who brought you here?
The police.
They
had like 8 police officers show up at my door. They put me in handcuffs.
Really?
Yeah.
And you were talking about earlier you were doing a drug therapy, ketamine?
Yeah. I tried it the first time on Wednesday.
What did entice this therapy?
Well, I've taken like 20 different antidepressants and none of them had any effect except highly negative, so... Ketamine's like experimental though. It's like they don't even fully know what it does to a person.
How did you take it?
So I had like an intravenous drip. They put it in your arm. That's like the most potent way to experience it.
And what was your experience like on ketamine?
So they had me like lie down, like reclining on like a bed sort of, and then they put earplugs on me, then they put headphones over the earplugs, and I had a blindfold on and everything. So I was listening to like, whatever ketamine kind of music, like calming, ambient piano stuff. And like, it takes about 15 minutes to get strong, but then it's like, it's considered similar to like psilocybin, but it's more clinical. So like the whole time, whereas psilocybin, I've had proper like psychosis on where I just had no idea what was going on.
You didn't think that helped you on
what?
Psilocybin?
I mean, it did a lot of things. None of them I would ascribe to helping me.
How did you go from trying to kill yourself in Halifax to being this person that I'm talking to? Like,
I'm the same person. I don't feel any different.
And do you think that what medication are you taking?
Currently, I'm taking duloxetine, which isn't working for depression. I also have fibromyalgia, which is like full body chronic pain, which is not curable. It's supposed to be for that, but it's not helping with it. And I take sleep medication. Last night I took the fourth kind I've taken since I got to the hospital. Yep.
And is this your first time here at Douglas, or have you?
I was here 5 years ago. I was actually brought here. I was in the hospital beforehand, and they transferred me they strapped me down to a bed so I couldn't move, and then they wheeled me out the hospital to an ambulance and wheeled me in here through the front door.
And where are your parents in all this?
My dad lives in Toronto. I haven't spoken to him in a while. And my mom, I hadn't spoken to her in a while since I got here at the Douglas. The legal department contacted her, and I ended up just, communicating with her by proxy, I suppose.
And do you think, do you have any friends that come visit you, or?
Nah, I'm not that good at, maintaining relationships.
I have the same issue.
Yeah.
I'm very outgoing with and sincere to people.
Yeah.
But to maintain a long-lasting relationship, it's a little harder for me.
Do you find it's on your part or their part?
It's mainly mine because, let's say the first time I introduce myself and talk to somebody, that conversation is going to have a long-lasting effect. And then the second, third, fourth, fifth time talking to the same person, I feel like I'm talking to a whole different person, train of thought,
Is it because their mindset changes or your mindset changes?
It's mainly mine because let's say my mood is stable when I first do the introduction and the second time, but then maintaining it seems like my mood's off or something, or some people take it personally, and I feel depressed too, and sometimes I feel that.
What's your diagnosis?
I'm schizophrenic.
But not depression?
No.
But you say you feel depressed.
Yeah, well, being here for the last 4 months, it's kind of.
So you feel it's been making you more depressed to be here?
Yeah. I feel like bipolar. Sometimes I have manic episodes on both ends of the spectrum, and my depression is very, very negatively affecting my life in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And then when I go to manic, it's something else to feel certain connections. Do you think you ever get manic episodes on the opposite?
No, it's mostly just consistently very, very low mood.
And do you think you do a lot of movie therapy,
I wouldn't call it movie therapy.
I think so, because you have a lot of
I studied cinema briefly in college, and then I dropped out of college.
Yeah, how long were you in college for?
Briefly, couple semesters. I didn't even finish 1 year. But I got into movies at a young age. I feel like, art for me, and specifically cinema, was I started off my interests were science and history at a young age, and then cinema was an intersection between science and human expression, which I started to develop an interest in. So I've watched way more movies than I ever wanted to.
Me too. I truly enjoy movie therapy.
Yeah.
Do you think growing up, did you have any girlfriends, or?
Let's broach a different topic.
Okay, of course, yeah. And when were your parents separated?
My parents separated when I was young.
And did it affect your life growing up?
Yeah, very much so.
Me too.
Yeah, I went with my mom initially, who's kind of borderline, and she's not really, at the time, she was depressed as well. She wasn't really equipped to raise me and my brother. And then I went with my father, who's just, an idiot and a dick. So, yeah.
Do you think you take from your dad's part? Because I think you're a dick sometimes.
Really?
No. You're just so skeptical and.
That makes me a dick. Yeah.
No. The way you are just so dry, and your humoristic is.
Yeah, but
I don't think you're a dick personally. I just think you have just like me dickish tendencies.
Yeah, the one thing
to be a smartass.
My father is he's a stupid man. He has an IQ of 80 or something. But the one thing I think I get from him is he's British, so I have a slight accent, but I also have, I think, sort of, like dry, sardonic sensibilities. That's how they do it over there. That's their humor. Yeah, there's a lot of good British literature.
And you grew up in Toronto, so why do you have an English accent?
My dad's British.
So you learned to speak English through him?
No, but like when you grow up around a person, you kind of develop like a slight, tinge in your voice.
Right on.
Or is it twinge? Which word is it? One of the two. Schrodinger's language.
Yeah. Well, it's a paradox in itself, and if growing up thinking you're in a matrix and thinking that God speaks to you,
No,
I think you're very, very gifted and very special. And
but the God thing was only like when I was like 6 years old or so. Like by the time I was like 9 or so, I decided I didn't believe in that stuff anymore, and then I got into like philosophy and whatnot, and then I started to develop my own opinions. These days my framework is entirely different from what it used to be.
Yeah, like I think you're highly intelligent, and what I've seen you do with computers, it's pretty impressive. It's a good outlet to outreach and to feel, some sort of connection with other people. It's very expressive.
What do you mean, like using a computer?
Yeah, like just the way that you downloaded in things.
No, I mean everyone thinks
your OCD. The day with the subtitles. You got it to the specific exactly.
I always feel a need to do that. Like sometimes, like when it's like an old movie or a long movie, like I go for like a half hour trying to adjust the subtitles. But yeah, everyone thinks like downloading torrents is so complicated. I don't find it that complicated. Like you use a VPN, you use a port forwarding, and you just find one of the million torrent sites. You just find what you're looking for.
Do you hack? Do you do any unethical business on the computer?
No, I don't know how to do that.
No.
And
I don't think you would admit to it if you did.
Nope. But it is what it is.
The more I talk to you, the more I think you're, in a good mood. And seeing you dance yesterday at the tree,
yeah,
and being expressive and everything, it made me see a whole different side of you.
I mean, it's depression dancing. I find, I like kind of, because I have like hypermobile joints. I like kind of just flailing my body around. It's kind of like spasming. It's like a release. It's the equivalent of like banging my head on something or punching something.
What were you doing the other day with your knuckles? You showed me them before the interview.
So I was saying about the ketamine. So it was an interesting experience. I said I'd equate it to like a clinical version of psilocybin, where it's like the whole time I was aware I was just on ketamine, and it was like an interesting experience, but it didn't help.
How did you feel on ketamine? Were you like, because I've done it recreational a few times. And
but you sniffed it, right?
No, I ate it.
You ate it? Like pills?
Yeah.
Yeah, but intravenous drip is like different because it's more potent. It goes right in your bloodstream.
Yeah. So how did it react to you? Like,
yeah. So it's like very vivid hallucinations. But for me it was like because the way I think, I have a constant internal monologue. So like I was kind of like having a particular narrative. My narrative, to my life, like common theme thing.
When you were in the K-hole, so to speak,
yeah.
You had one foot on reality and one foot into your trip, so to speak.
Yeah.
Did you feel out of control at any point?
No, like even in the middle of the session, because I accidentally I was supposed to select, like they had playlists saved to choose. I was supposed to select one. I didn't realize I selected a song, and I accidentally added it to the queue 7 times. So I was like, when I was doing the trip, I was like, why is this song so long? And then I realized, it's just been playing again and again and again. So I had to stop it.
I hope it was a good song.
It was meh, I have it again next week. I have it twice next week, so I'm going to ask if I can use my own music.
Right on. Yeah, you do have a big playlist library on
Tell them how many songs I have on Spotify.
Last time I looked, it was 19,000 songs.
About?
If you're liked, I'm at 1,000 and I discovered music literally like a year and a half ago.
You discovered music?
Yeah.
Like you didn't know what it was?
I knew what it was, but I never listened to it. I heard the songs, but I never listened to the words or, how you feel on a specific moment.
You never vibed with it.
Exactly. And then in the last 2 years where I became spiritually awoken, I felt this deep connection with something larger than life.
What does it mean to be spiritually awoken in your view?
Well, you awaken and you, how can I put it so bluntly? You become a different person, so to speak, and you're like fused. Like you heard the expression kindred spirits.
What does that particularly mean? Like, doesn't that just mean like
I felt like I had a spiritual connection to certain eggs, which are animals, so to speak, and then I had a spiritual connection with religion, and then a spiritual connection to my kindred spirit. Like, you've heard the expression having an old soul.
Yeah.
Do you think you have an old soul?
Well, you didn't let me get to the thing about my knuckles. I wanted to finish.
Oh, yeah. You were hitting...
No, so with the ketamine, I was just going to finish. So, like, I said I have an internal monologue. So it's like, common themes in my life were, cropping up... is it on? So common themes in my life, crop up again and again, like frustration, confusion, trauma, like various things like that. So it manifested in a few different ways. At one point in the trip, I was like, so frustrated with the universe, I was trying to like physically claw my way out of it to a different reality. At one point, I felt as though I was like, underground and like above me, on the surface, there were like these ethereal beings who were in a more like immaculately sculpted reality. I was, below them. In whatever, imperfect concoction of a demiurge. But to me, like, it's a lot of people, like, find it very impactful spiritually. I'll get to that. A lot of people find it very impactful spiritually, that sort of thing. For me, I just felt it's like the brain going haywire, neurons firing off, just that sort of thing. The brain's a tricky organ. So the trip was pleasant overall, nothing, mind-blowing or anything. And then afterwards, I was quite dizzy. I had trouble standing. But
how long did it last?
The trip, about an hour.
And how long was the therapy session, experimental therapy? How long was it from the get-go of you getting registered or you going to the place?
What do you mean?
How long was it in total?
I went to the place. I had to fill out a long form, and then they had me do a piss test, and then they did the therapy about an hour. Then I filled out another form, and then eventually I got released. So like at this point I was feeling depressed, dejected, because I thought it would cure my depression or help at least. It didn't do that at all. And then so the ketamine lab is 5 minutes away from where we are here in CPC2. So while I was walking back, I started being overcome with like a strange feeling of like, malaise, something akin to, Sartre's Nausea. You know that book? Okay. Nausea by John Paul Sartre?
I'm not familiar with it.
It's a good book. Like the world is closing in around you, you feel claustrophobic even though you're outside. And like I started like running, like to kind of shake off this feeling, and I started doing somersaults, and I ran up to a tree and I started like speed punching it, like like Goku or something.
Yeah, your knuckles are pretty bloody. It looks like you got in a fight.
Yeah,
fight club.
My knuckles were bleeding. And then I came inside. And for about a half hour, I physically couldn't control myself. I was like running down the hallways, screaming, doing somersaults, climbing on objects. I tried to drink hand soap, and luckily, none of the nurses helped or noticed, because, the system's pretty shit. One of the patients was very nice and followed me around, made sure I didn't hurt myself. It's on?
Yeah.
Yeah, at one point I army crawled down the entire long hallway on my belly like a snake.
This was a nice trip.
No, this was not fun. This was terrifying. I couldn't stop myself.
You were tripping out afterwards.
I was mumbling like gibberish. At one point I was screaming the American national anthem. And then eventually, after like a half hour of this, I was twitching and all that. I sat down in a chair and I cried my eyes out, like the hardest I've ever cried in my life. I barely ever cry. I don't normally cry, but I just cried so hard, and then I was just like in a daze for a few hours. But today I feel like exactly the same as I did beforehand.
And do you think, do you recommend this therapy to other people who are clinically depressed?
I mean, they told me that my reaction was very uncommon. So, like, I'm sure it helps some people, and like, it's better than nothing, I suppose.
It's a trial.
But for me, like, my reaction was so bad that I was accused by the nurses of taking meth, because I guess they didn't know I took ketamine, like, legally through therapy. And they actually took away my outdoor privileges until I did a piss test, and it came back negative, which it obviously did the following day.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jared, for coming to the podcast. And I really hope that you find the joy in life, and you work this depression out, and however you feel it's necessary.
Hopefully.
Thank you so much, Jared. You have a great night.